At the height of its power, the Inca Empire was the largest, and its military was the most feared throughout South America. However, the Inca army was defeated by a relatively small contingent of Spanish conquistadors, who numbered less than 200 and were led by Francisco Pizarro. How did the Spanish achieve such a feat? The year was 1529, and Francisco Pizarro had just returned to Spain, beaming with smiles and brimming with confidence as he approached Her Majesty Isabella, the Queen of Spain. His mission was to inform her of the abundant riches on the plains of Peru, and to ask for permission to conquer and add it to strengthen the Spanish Empire. The Queen, ever so willing to gain new territories, gave her blessings. Then Francisco Pizarro gathered his brothers Gonzalo, Hernando, Juan, and Francisco Martin, along with 168 men, and set sail towards the Inca Empire with only one goal: to conquer it and make the inhabitants subjects of the Spanish Empire. The previous year, Francisco Pizarro, a conquistador, had journeyed to the Inca Empire, studied the civilization, and familiarized himself with the terrain. After all, that was his duty as a conquistador. Conquistadors were soldiers who doubled as explorers, tasked with discovering new lands, colonizing them, plundering their natural resources, and establishing new trade routes for the Spanish Empire. They explored the strengths and weaknesses of empires and meticulously planned how to best conquer and rule them. Thus, when Francisco Pizarro returned to conquer the people of the Inca, he already knew how best to go about it. Meanwhile, the Inca had just gone through 4 years of intense civil war as two half-brothers, Atahualpa and Huáscar, vied for the rulership of the Inca Empire. The bloody battle began after the previous Inca ruler, Huayca Cápac, died in 1527 as a result of a deadly disease that had swept through the north, killing thousands. The disease, which was later discovered to be smallpox, probably came from Europe. Huayca Cápac wasn't the only one to succumb to smallpox, as his son and heir to the throne, Ninan Cuyochi, also died of the same sickness. This left the throne vacant and up for grabs, as there were no clear lines of succession. This meant imbalance and times of uncertainty for the empire. Since the brothers Atahualpa and Huáscar couldn't decide on who to rule, the empire was divided among them. Atahualpa got the northern parts, where a huge chunk of the army was stationed, while Huáscar got a larger portion of the empire with the capital Cusco, but with fewer soldiers. However, Huáscar wanted the entire Inca Empire all to himself because he believed he was the legitimate heir to the throne. Therefore, he started the civil war by killing the messengers Atahualpa sent to bring peace offerings. This annoyed Atahualpa, who headed south with his huge army to capture the capital Cusco and behead Huáscar. A series of battles ensued, with Atahualpa's army finally emerging victorious and capturing Huáscar. Messengers carried the news of victory to Atahualpa, who rejoiced and then made his way to the region of Cajamarca. But little did he know that the events at Cajamarca would mark the end of his life. In the meantime, Francisco Pizarro and his troops had just arrived and settled in Cajamarca. Learning of Atahualpa's presence in the region, Pizarro invited him to his house, to which the Inca leader obliged, and the two had a fruitful conversation. Francisco Pizarro proposed that they meet the following day at the Cajamarca Plaza to celebrate Atahualpa's victory and ascendance to the throne. Atahualpa was excited at Francisco Pizarro's proposition, but Pizarro had other sinister motives. The next day, Francisco Pizarro and his fellow conquistadors, numbering 168 with 60 on horses, arrived early at the Cajamarca Plaza and laid an ambush by hiding in the walls of the plaza, waiting for Atahualpa and his troops to arrive. Atahualpa and around 6,000 of his Inca warriors arrived at the plaza unarmed, but saw no one and decided to wait. After some time, Friar Vicente de Valverde, a Dominican friar with the conquistadors, came out and read the Requerimiento, a declaration by the King of Spain that stated that God had ordained him to conquer and colonize new territories. He continued that anyone who stood in their way was killed for defying the divine orders. After reading the Requerimiento, Valverde handed the Bible to Atahualpa as a sign and authority of the Requerimiento. However, Atahualpa flung the Bible away in anger, which was considered an act of insubordination, and therefore he had sealed his fate. What followed was a deafening silence as the friar froze in shock, while Atahualpa and his men waited for what would happen next. Boom! A shot from a cannon broke the silence that enveloped the Cajamarca plaza. Then Francisco Pizarro shouted, "Santiago!" the war cry of the conquistadors, signaling them to start the attack. This was followed by a series of loud gunshots and raging horses which frightened the Inca warriors. Atahualpa and his men started to panic at the sight of the horses and the sound of the arquebuses, and they ran helter-skelter. In the heat of the frenzy, 6,000 Inca warriors forced themselves through the narrow gates of the Cajamarca and trampled each other to death. Meanwhile, Francisco Pizarro made his way to Atahualpa and captured him, but decided against killing him when he realized that the Inca Emperor was more valuable to him alive than dead. Atahualpa, on the other hand, thought that the Spanish conquistadors were pirates who had come to plunder his resources. Therefore, he offered them a room full of gold and silver in the hopes that they would liberate him. Francisco Pizarro agreed to this proposition, and the Inca Emperor ordered for gold and silver to be brought from all corners of the empire. Thus, for 4 months, Francisco and his brother Hernando plundered almost all of the treasures of the Incas, including the gold plates from the Temple of the Sun, the holy site of the empire. After fulfilling his side of the bargain, Atahualpa requested his freedom, but Francisco Pizarro refused, pointing out that he, Atahualpa, had wronged the Inca Empire by killing Huáscar and was not fit to live. Atahualpa retorted that he had pacified the people of the Inca for starting a rebellion and killing their king, and therefore was fit to rule. Realizing that Atahualpa was no longer useful to him, Francisco Pizarro ordered his death. The Inca Emperor was given the option to convert to Christianity or die by burning at the stake, a punishment reserved for those who rejected Christianity. The Emperor chose Christianity so he could be spared and return to his people. However, some scholars believe that Atahualpa chose Christianity because the Inca tradition forbade the burning of the dead, as this would make them incomplete in the afterlife. Whatever his reasons were, Atahualpa became a Christian and was baptized by Friar Valverde, only to be strangled to death after being tried and found guilty of idolatry, incestuous marriage, and polygamy, all considered grave sins by the church. After the death of Atahualpa in 1533, the conquistadors installed a puppet king, Tupac Hualpa, but he died shortly after and was replaced by his brother, Manco Inca Yupanqui. The new emperor allied himself with the conquistadors and solidified his rule over the southern part of the empire, but the northern part remained a huge problem. Atahualpa's generals who survived the massacre at the Battle of Cajamarca were gathering troops in the north to launch an assault on Manco and the conquistadors and to avenge the death of their former king. However, Manco got wind of the plot and organized his armies, probably with the help of the conquistadors, and marched to the north. After a series of conflicts, Manco defeated the warriors in the north and consolidated his rule over the whole empire. However, Pizarro and the conquistadors had other ideas, as they managed to use their superior battle tactics and armory to limit Manco's rule to only Cusco, the capital of the Inca Empire. There, Manco was mistreated and held against his will by the conquistadors till he could no longer bear it and planned his escape. He deceived his captors that there was a huge golden statue in the nearby town of UK, and he was the only one who knew where it was. Thus, he would fetch the statue for them, if only they allowed him. The conquistadors agreed and Manco escaped, regrouped his army and besieged Cusco in 1536 in a bid to wrestle the empire from the Spanish. But the superior armament of the Spanish, coupled with conflicts among the Incas and low morale among Manco's troops, led to the failure of the siege, and Manco retreated to the region of Vilcabamba. There, he formed a new Inca Empire, much smaller than the old one, and he ruled for decades, repelling several attempts by the conquistadors to take over his kingdom. Manco eventually died in Vilcabamba and was succeeded by his son, Tupac Amaru, who continued his father's attempts to regain the lost empire, but failed woefully. Tupac Amaru was the last emperor of the Inca Empire, and he was killed by the conquistadors in 1572. In all, the conquest of the Inca Empire took about 4 decades and was made possible by diseases, superior weapons of the conquistadors, and internal conflicts among the Incas. And that's all for today's page in history. If you liked this video, then press the like button and subscribe to this channel for more exciting historical content. See you in the next video.